It's good to be back. It's been a while. I'm happy to be here, and so thanks to Meteor for having me. I'm here to talk about Iron Router, and I'd like to show you some things I've been working on. Kind of went on this, well, my primary responsibility is to work on Evented Mind and the platform of Evented Mind, and of course to teach. And as part of doing that, I work on some of these open source packages like Iron Router. But occasionally I just get this urge to just not do anything else for like a month. And that's what I did a couple months ago. So I'd like to show you some of those packages and some of the updates to Iron Router. I think the theme here is that the first round of Iron Router, from a year or so ago, was an experiment. It was, let's see what a router looks like with a framework like Meteor, where it can run on both the client and on the server. So it had a lot of rough edges. We experimented with a lot of different sort of patterns. It wasn't clear exactly what to do in all cases, but we just kind of put it out there and tried it. We've learned a lot, though, in the past year. And we've learned a lot from using Iron Router in real applications, and so both in Evented Mind, but also in lots of production applications that are out there. And I think what's happened is we've built this package around real applications, so around complex applications, big applications. And this next phase is about taking a lot of those lessons, cleaning up the package, and preparing it now for a more mature future. And so quite a few things to show you. One of them is that the package is now called Iron::Router, so you hopefully know that already. But there's a couple things I'd like to show you. First, I'd like to show you a much stronger story around server-side routing. So we had that a little bit in the last version, but it was sort of loosely put in there. It wasn't very sophisticated. And so there's a new package that actually powers Iron Router called Iron Middleware Stack, which is very much like Connect, except that it runs on both the client and the server. And this allows us to do some pretty exciting things that I'll show you. The second thing I'd like to talk to you about is Iron Controller. And so this is how we go about organizing our applications. And there's a lot of new functionality in Iron Controller that integrates very deeply with Meteor Blaze and with the application development experience. And then I'd like to show you a couple examples of some new features in Iron Layout and Iron Dynamic Template, which allow us to dynamically render layouts and templates and change event handlers and change data using JavaScript. So, and then finally, if we have enough time, in about 10 minutes from now, I'm going to show you all of this working on Internet Explorer, which is supposed to be this grand finale. It's also probably using all of my CPU in the background. OK, so I've got a regular Meteor app running here. I'm just going to kind of go through this with you in real time here. So this doesn't have Iron Router installed at all. It's just a regular Hello World app. So let me blow it up a little. And what I'm going to do here is add the new Iron Router. So I'm going to be using a development version, so you're going to get some preview features here. And the first thing that happens when I add the router is the page actually is going to change now once hot code push kicks in here. And what's happened here is the router actually knows now about all of your routes, and it knows about it on the server, and it knows about it on the client. And so it's able to say, hey, on the server, you don't have any routes defined yet, so I'm just going to show you this pretty page and get you started. The next thing to look at here is that the APIs have gotten quite a bit simpler, I think. But like any open source package, feedback is welcome. So to create a route is pretty straightforward. We just call the route method. And we provide a URL. So that's kind of the basis of the router, is to say, let's organize our applications somehow. Well, organizing them by URL seems to make sense. So that's going to be the first parameter now. And then we'll provide a function that we're going to run in response to this route, where we can do things like render out a template. So you get some helpful error messages. That's a new feature that shows you that, hey, you don't have a template named hello or named home, so let's just go ahead and create one. Oh, There we go. Okay. The dangers of live coding. So what's happened here is it's just the router is automatically, as before, it's taken over our body. It's actually appended this to the body, injected this layout. And inside of our route function, we just said, hey, render out this template named home. So not too much is different here. It's just the APIs have gotten a little bit simpler. Now let me come back to the client. I want to go back to the server here for a second. Now, the Meteor story, is really a lot about client applications, and I think that's great. But in real complex applications, you have server routes. You just do. One of the reasons you have them is for things like webhooks. So for example, if you're running an education site and you want people to pay you, you need to have some way for Stripe to integrate with your site. And so being able to create RESTful routes on the server side has been just a little annoying in the past, and that's gotten quite a bit easier. So what I can do here is just create a route, and let's just call it webhook Stripe. And again, I can just provide a function. We'll get to controllers in a second. And what I'm going to do is I can provide function handlers for the various HTTP verbs. So now I basically have two handlers for this route, webhook Stripe, one for the post request and one for a GET request. And just like before, I can render out some response, just like you can with the regular Node application. Now, the cool thing about server-side routes, we don't have a ton of time, so I'm not going to go through the whole example. I just want to give you a sense of it, is that we can do things now that we couldn't do before. Like, for example, we can render proper 404s from the server if a route doesn't actually exist. And so this ends up being really important in production applications because the Google bot and other search engines have no other way of knowing whether or not the route exists or not if you don't tell them by providing a 404. So for example, on Event in Mind, we have some old links, and we need to be able to say this route no longer exists. So the router just kind of has built-in server-side support for that. One of the cool things that this enables through this middleware stack is the ability to, in the future, say, hey, a route doesn't actually need to just exist on the client or on the server. It can exist in both places. And we could say that it works in both places as well. So maybe it just depends on how I reach it. So if I go directly from make a curl request, I might just get back some HTML. So you call that server-side rendering. And then once the application is loaded on the client and I go to that route, I might just stay on the client. So this has been kind of part of enabling that feature. OK, so the next part of what I want to show you is a new package called Iron Controller. And this was actually built into the previous version of Iron Router, but it kind of separated it out now with the new packaging system. So these are kind of all separate packages. So let me jump over to that. And kind of jump up here. OK. So just to recap, if you haven't been using, how many people use Iron Router? If there's nobody, then OK, great. So I don't need to lay a lot of groundwork. So some new people would say, well, why do you provide a function versus a controller? Does it really make a difference? And I like to think of it as controllers are just an organizing principle. It's just a way to organize our applications. So as the apps start to get much larger, it becomes nice to have a single place that we can go to say, all the pages or all this sort of things associated with this with this part of the application go in this one place. And we call that a controller. So it's a way to organize our applications instead of having a giant route file that has all these functions in it. So here's a simple application. I'm not very inventive, so I always come back to this blog app. So if somebody wants to come help me build a sexier demo, come see me after. But what this app has is a bunch of controllers. Now, historically, controllers were kind of useful because it gave us a place to put state, but they didn't interoperate that well with our page. And that made it kind of sort of useful as a place to kind of separate at least all these routing functions into separate files. But now it has much stronger kind of integration. So let me show you a couple of examples here by clicking on one of these articles. The first is, let me pull up the article.html. OK. The first is that we can access methods on the controller directly from our templates now. So without having to do anything too special, hopefully this will just work. If it doesn't, it's implemented, trust me. So you can see that we're actually bypassing the template helpers and going right up to the controller, which is pretty nice because right now in Meteor we have to organize everything by templates, but helpers within templates helpers only work for the templates that they're defined on. And so we can't define like an overall page template and then just have that work for everything. So what ends up happening is you have helpers strewn all over these views, and it becomes hard to organize. So this is much easier. It sort of plugs into the Blaze engine in a very deep way and says, hey, you can just put all your helpers here if you want, and it'll work fine. So, no applauses. All right. That's all right. About that. It's all right. All right. Now it's uncomfortable. Stop. OK, so let me go over to another route controller here. So here's one for a new article. And the other kind of frustrating thing is that the way that we control our applications typically is we have helpers, and we also have event handlers. And having all of that in one place is useful as well. So the other thing you can do is just define event handlers directly on the controller. So right from within here, this will respond to events for the entire layout, for the entire page. And if you're a contributor to Iron Router, one of the cool things here that you'll notice is that when we go from route to route, the templates may not even change. And so we're actually dynamically changing the event handlers depending upon the page that you're on, which was a pretty neat feat. So what we're going to do is just handle the submit event. Now, the arguments inside of the event handler are going to be the same, but the this arg is going to be the control instance. So in this case, we can access state on this controller right from within our event handlers without having to store everything in some global object. So for the sake of time, I think I'm going to just kind of show you that this works, and then let's do this. Let's just pass some fake values. So now I can just have a method right up here. And so where is doSubmit? Well, it's right up here. So I don't need to go finding it. And so we might do something here, like submit the form. But the other thing that makes controllers kind of useful is that it's useful to have state for the page, to be able to define your page in terms of, like, for example, the button text here is submit. But maybe if I'm submitting to something asynchronously, I want the button to change to saving, ... or something. And then once the save completes, I want to set the state very quickly back to something else. So I could do that here. And I'm just going to kind of simulate very quickly by using this reactive dictionary that's on the controller instance. So I can just say, let's just set the saving text to something, whatever you want. And let's go over here to the article new. Then from within our templates, we can use this special syntax. Do you see this here, the get? Which will automatically go up and find the first controller that it can find and pull out the value of this saving text. So this makes it much easier as you're building kind of more complex applications to just have all of this state in one place, and it can change as you navigate through the application based on URL. So I'm running a little out of time, but I want to just kind of quickly highlight some other features that you should take a look at. One of them is Iron Layout and Iron Dynamic Template have gotten a lot more powerful. So it used to be that you'd have to say yield region everywhere. Remember, like you would say yield regions, and you'd provide an object of templates to their actual. You can do that right in your templates now. So you can just use a special new helper called content for. And if you've been following the feed, you can see a demo of that there. So if we, for example, in this template, wanted to provide content for a particular part of the layout, we can just use this content for helper. And this allows us to take content and inject it into different parts of the layout. OK, so quick whirlwind tour of some other features. This should be working in Internet Explorer. And one of the things you can see is the URL is actually just seamlessly changing now to using hash fragments. And one of the other cool things you can see here is that there's another package called Iron Location, which provides reactive URLs under the hood that works across browsers and normalizes it so that we can get a bunch of values reactively for the URL. And notice that let's add it to watch. Notice that the path and the path name and everything are normalized. So even though we're using a hash scheme because we're on an older browser, as far as this is Iron Location is concerned, it's all the same. So we're just using regular URLs. So this was actually quite a feat to get this to work on Internet Explorer effectively, but I think it's working pretty well. So quite a bit to show. I just wanted to give kind of a whirlwind tour of it. And to close, I think that the idea here was to solve a lot of bugs on GitHub and to create features that will, as Meteor moves towards 1.0, allow people to build really complex, really rich applications and organize them effectively. So with that, if anybody has any questions, happy to answer them.
Yeah, we've got 2 or 3 minutes for questions, so if anyone in the room, they all popped up at once. I think Sam was first, or Bjorn? Okay.
All right, so with your controllers, when you're posting forms, is that all client-side or using DDP? Or is that using your Iron router to post back to I don't know, to make a REST post back? How does that work?
Oh, I see. So no, on the form, what was happening there is I was submitting the form client-side and then using an event handler to handle that event. And I'm not going to the server at all. I was just handling it client-side, yeah. But I wanted to also demonstrate that you can have server routes if you want. In that case, it was not a really good reason to go to the server through a regular RESTful route. You can just use RPC methods.
Okay, I think Sam was next.
Yeah. So I've been away from Iron Router for a bit. What's the best way to catch up again?
Should I plug Evented Mind, I guess? You should watch Evented Mind videos. I'm releasing a class tomorrow on Iron Router. It's about an hour and a half, and it covers all of this stuff in detail. I was going to release it today, but I didn't finish the descriptions. So it's going tomorrow.
Yeah.
And you should use the get_started coupon. It'll give you $10 off for the first month.
Yeah. And the question was, what's the fastest way to get caught up on Iron Router if you've been away from it for a while?
I'm an amateur speaker.
It's OK. Everybody forgets.
Other questions?
There were a bunch over there.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if there's anything new coming in with animation, with any of the new plays you like us or anything.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of opportunity for that. Tom Coleman has been working on it. So he pings me to make sure that Dynamic Template has the right stuff in it to make his Iron Transitioner, I think it's called, to work properly. But I'm not sure exactly what the state of that project is, because I'm not using it in my own app.
I was wondering about the state thing. Awesome, because I don't like using session, and I find it goes across different pages, and I want to have all state within one thing. Question is there, I use a lot of on before and on after hooks to play with these things right here. Can I still access kind of state from my on before and on after?
Yeah, so the controller instance, the this arg. So the question is, can you access the state object from within the hooks or plugins? Plugins, by the way, is a new feature as well. So yeah, everything from within all of those methods, whether it be hooks or action function, it's all the controller instance. It's all the this arg is the same. So yeah, you just say this.state.get or set. Yeah. Other questions? This thing says 28 seconds. Yeah, go ahead.
So you've got the event handlers that work across the templates, across the different parts. Is that using jQuery document? Is that how you're sort of feeding up to the top level? Are you listening to events at the document level?
It's using Blaze.
Okay.
So Blaze is the question was how do we wire up the event handlers dynamically, and it's plugging into the Blaze DOM range system. Yeah. Actually, the code looks very similar to the way the normal templates do it, but with a couple extra things.
OK, and that's time.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris.